Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. So today I will discuss about how those large corporations are working with startups. But before, I will just give you a short introduction about who we are at 500 Startups. So we have an American VC. We set up, found across the world. Now we have done investment in above 1,800 companies across the world. And we started that only 7 years ago. So now we do close to 500 investment per year. And here in Japan, one of my colleagues that you can see here, James, is running our fund for Japan. So we're doing investment in Japan also. And these are some of the companies that we invest in. So you may have heard of Twilio, for example, just an IPO just last year. Or, for example, Viki here have been acquired by Rakuten for 200 million a few years ago. But let's talk about business innovation. So what we saw now is a lot of things changing. So as you know, I was speaking earlier today, the world's largest taxi company don't own any taxi, right? And those guys are Uber, right? Those people don't own anything and they scale worldwide. If you look at the most valuable retailer in Asia, this is Alibaba. Same, if you look at the biggest media company, they don't produce any content. So this company is Facebook. So you produce the content and they make the money, right? And if you look at the world's largest accommodation company, they don't have any property. This is Airbnb. And it's very interesting because if you do a ratio of Airbnb between the value of the company now and the number of employees, it's like 50 times better than Marriott. With way more rooms, way less employees, is around like 3,000 to 4,000 employees worldwide. They have 2 million rooms available worldwide, which is way bigger than Marriott in just a few years. So this is very interesting because those companies manage to scale globally very quickly with not that much money to really challenge those very large corporations. And this is more like already like 15 years ago for a company like Alibaba. Uber is more like 7, 8 years ago already. But we also saw like different business innovation model for like specific industry. So if you look at Walmart, Kickstarter, and Jet, they're all of them selling product, but in a different way. Walmart, you go, you buy. Kickstarter, you buy. Maybe one day you will receive it. Who knows? Not always. And Jet.com initially was a subscription model. What is very interesting here is that recently Walmart acquired Jet.com for above $3 billion. So you get all players like Walmart having acquisition of technologies or e-commerce company to go online. When you look at those companies that are doing hardware like phone or laptop, those three are very different kind of business model. Apple do a lot of forecasting. They need to get an idea about how many iPhone 8, 32 gigabytes, black you will buy in like Japan. Where Dell, the model was more about, tell me what you want, I'll produce, then I send it to you. Xiaomi did a different way. I produce, I do a flash sales, I just have very few items, and you buy. And when you look at transportation, you start to see also a lot of different models. If you look at Tesla, Uber, BlaBlaCar, or Zipcar, all of them are offering you transportation, but with different models. If you look at BlaBlaCar as a French unicorn, I mean, they talk a lot about France before, is more like for 300 to 400 kilometers, for example. Zipcar, you're more renting for 1 hour. Uber, very short. Usually it's like 10 to 30 minutes. You don't do that much long time with those guys. And Tesla, tomorrow, maybe you can do like longer ride. And why all those kind of things are happening now is because you get way more like data. When you look at Uber, when you look at dating websites like OkCupid, they know a lot about you. If you go on the blog of Uber, they're able to tell you when you date someone in Boston, depending on how you use the Uber. If you look at OkCupid, they can tell you what is the best question to ask to know if someone will sleep with you the first night. This is just because they collect a lot of data and they know how to use it. And of course, now you get a lot of artificial intelligence. So on top of the data and analytics, it allows you to do a lot of interesting stuff now. So then when we look at all those trends and also look at those companies, like it's very interesting. When you look at Borders, they get the opportunity to do some ebooks, but they're like, no, this will never work, right? It's very interesting because now Amazon is selling more ebooks than books, and they're also opening some shops now. You look at Blockbuster, they got the opportunity to buy Netflix. They didn't. Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore, right? And you look at Kodak, they invented the digital camera, and they decided to don't do it. They're like, no, this will don't work. This is challenging our core business. They don't did it. And then now you know what happened to this company. And then if you go on CB Insight website, I strongly recommend this website. You find a lot of examples like that. So you see like car makers are getting challenged. In fact, we just signed a partnership with GM. You look at banks. They got challenged by many people. Here, if you look at ADM or TransferWise, those European companies already have $1 billion valuation and above. So I call that like the death by 1,000 cuts. Nobody come and challenge your core business, but you get 1,000 startups coming and challenging each of your piece of business one by one, and you don't see them necessarily like coming. And then you look at, even if P&G, they got challenged by many new players, right? Unilever is doing also a lot of work with startups now. And even if less sexy company, like more B2B hardcore business like Honeywell, they're getting challenged by a lot of startups coming to chase their business. So then why this is happening? One of the reasons is because now it's easier to scale a business very quickly. If you look at Dell, it took them 9 years to reach $1 billion in sales. Here, we don't talk about valuation, we talk in sales, right? You look at Priceline or Groupon, it took them around 2 years to do that. So very quickly, those businesses can have $1 billion in sales. When you're like a company like Oracle and you're making like 40 billion in sales, someone start to make $1 billion in sales in your industry, start to come and challenge you. We're not talking about valuation again here. And then why also this is happening? Because now it's becoming very cheap to start a startup. In 2000, it was around $5 million USD to start something, right? Nowadays, if you use like AWS, Google Cloud, or any other provider of cloud, and you have a developer team, it just costs you like $5K to start a company. So meaning everyone can start something. And this is a very famous one, right? Nokia, we didn't did anything wrong, but we fail. So not moving is not enough. You need always to move. You need to change. You need to do some innovation, right? If you just wait and see, you are just dying. So we saw all this kind of thing, all this kind of trend, and we're wondering, like, what is really happening? What corporates are doing with startups, and how startups are working with startups. So what we did, we partnered with INSEAD, which is one of the leading schools. They just got ranked 2 years ago as the #1 MBA school in the world, above the US one for a one-year program. And there was also a lot of entrepreneurs coming from this school, and a lot of VC also working in this school. So what we did, we looked at the 2,000 biggest companies according to Forbes. We took the first 500, and for each of them, we look about what are they doing with startup, one by one. So I will share with you now like 10 stories, 10 interesting things that we found out when we do this research. The first one is about DocuSign. So this company raised a very late round, Series E round, only with corporates. And as you can see here, we get a lot of Japanese corporates too in this round. We'll get Recruit, we get Mitsui, and we got MKE, right? Those three are Japanese. Oh, sorry, 4. You get NTT Docomo too. So you get a lot of Japanese corporate to come into this round. What is interesting, this also means for 2 other players, like entrepreneur, you can raise a round without VC. Just talk to corporates. But this also means for VC, if you do late stage round investment, be aware that maybe corporate will come and take your round. You'll be not able to invest in this round. So this is quite interesting. We also look at the unicorn leads done by the Wall Street Journal. At this time, it was around like 130 startups. The majority of them, in fact, 61.7% of them, have raised money from corporates. So it means the majority of unicorns get money from corporates. It's not only an exception. And here, we're being very strict. We remove every bank, and we remove every investment firm to look at those kind of investment. So now, tell me a little bit more about on the startup side. So we found this story quite interesting. Coca-Cola, a beverage company, invested in Spotify, a music streaming company. So if you're a startup, what you should look at is not about the brand, it's not about who is Coke, it's more about what are the assets of the company. And I don't know if you know, but one of the biggest assets of Coca-Cola is supply chain. In fact, they have more trucks than UPS, DHL, and FedEx together to deliver Coke worldwide. So it's kind of, if you spin off the supply chain of Coke, it's kind of the biggest logistic company in the world. If you're Spotify, you want to deliver your product worldwide, let's say just with a QR code for someone to download the music, Coca-Cola is a perfect match. They can allow you to reach out to everyone in the world. You can buy Coke in any country of the world except 2, except North Korea and except Cuba. And Cuba is changing now. So it just means you can go everywhere except North Korea now. For Coke, this was interesting because they want to change the experience they're providing to users, consumers. So the thing is, you can drink a Coke, and you can also at the same time download your favorite song. So this was some interest for Coca-Cola to do this deal. This is another story. You got Lucasfilm, who owns Star Wars, who have been acquired by Disney for $4 billion. And then Disney decided to do a program with Techstar, having Techstar to run their own accelerator. And then one of the companies went through this program. The name is Sphero. And they were able to do these small devices, hardware. So the CEO of Sphero was talking with one of the very senior person from Disney. And the guy said, hey, look, we're doing these little robots in the next Star Wars. Can you do that? And he built these little robots. They get massive sales into that. And why this startup was able to do that? Because they get a privileged access to senior people at Disney to be able to build that. I want to talk about another example, Orange Telecom. So we talk a lot about software company, but what about the hardware companies? When you're in a hardware company, one of your main challenges is, how can I get the production of my hardware? You go to Shenzhen, and then you go in a factory, and you ask, can you do 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000? But for a lot of factories, this is way too small. They don't care about you. So the thing is, what Orange did, because they're also doing a lot of hardware, all those boxes to have access to internet, TV, and phone communication, they offer to some startup, like the one you see here on the top and on the bottom, those two, they offer them to have access to their suppliers. In fact, even if other companies like BMW offer this kind of thing, as a corporate, you can offer access to your customers, which makes also a lot of sense in B2B and B2C, but you can also offer access to suppliers. So as a startup, the goal is, what are the assets of a corporation, and really think about the assets they have and how you can leverage those assets. We also look at corporate doing R&D. Why? Because when you're a corporation, there's like 3 ways to do innovation. You build, so this is R&D. You buy, this is M&A. Or you partner. So this is what mostly we look after in this report. And when we released the report, it was 9 out of 10 of those biggest R&D spenders we were working with startups. In fact, now it's 10 out of 10. All of them are working with startups. So this is just a piece of the strategy. Everyone is doing R&D. Most of the people are doing M&A, and we'll see like who is really doing work with startups. This goes across every industry. Here we see an insurance company in China, Ping An Insurance Group. They have a venture arm, right? And then we also look at countries. And this was an interesting fact that we found that France was #1 and not the US. In fact, it's 23 out of the 25 biggest French companies who are working with startups. And we found also different models. So usually, when you do venture arm, you give money in exchange of equity. But you get few media companies like ProSiebenSat.1 in Germany or MediaCorp in Singapore, for example. They're offering media for equity. So they, in exchange of advertisement time on their channels, you give them equity in your startups, which makes sense when you're a large company like Zalando in Germany or Zalora in Southeast Asia. As I mentioned, any industry is doing that. Here you go, Diageo. They're doing an accelerator for beverages. So if you want to build the next whiskey, maybe challenging to beat like Japanese whiskey, but you can go in London and go to the Distill Ventures program to build the next beverage. So every industry is working with startups. Even if the government is working with startups, so even if the CIA have a fund to do investment in startups. Last, we saw also a lot of collaboration. So here's an example of 5 corporates who went together having a vertical integration and invest in eco-mobility. So corporate don't necessarily chase alone. They can be with team members to look at doing deals and work more with startups. So this is what we found. In fact, the majority of the 500 biggest corporations in the world who are listed are working with startups, 52.4% of them. What is very interesting is the top 100 are working 2 times more than the bottom 100. So here there's really something happening. The reality is that almost the majority of them are working with startups now. So this is a very easy way to represent that. We have like more details on the report, but there's a lot of different ways. So if you're a startup, you need to think about, I want to work with this corporate because they can help me. They can offer me some support services, technical support. Or They can help me from investment or venture debt. There's a lot of different ways that, as a startup, you can leverage a corporate. Co-working space is an interesting one. G&G, Johnson & Johnson, is offering co-working spaces in the US. If you're a medtech or biotech startup and you need to have access to very expensive machine, if you go to this kind of co-working space, it's perfect. Same for hardware. In Japan, GMM are also offering like this kind of hardware facility for hardware entrepreneur. So we look after 8 different categories. And what we found is the number one thing that all those corporates are doing is a venture arm. And this is also what is happening in Japan. The majority of the corporate in Japan working with startups is through a venture arm. The second thing is a startup competition because it's quite easy to organize. And the top 3 after that is accelerator and incubator. We saw a lot of those accelerators happening in, across Asia. So then when we look after countries, here we look only at countries having at least 10 corporations in the report, in the 500 biggest. What we found in terms of collaboration, the top 5 are European countries, except one, except Japan, right? So Japan is doing it in a specific way, which is very interesting. It's almost all of them and only doing corporate venture arm. Very few are doing accelerators and other initiatives. But corporate venture arm is like the sweet spot for corporates in Japan. And I would love to see them to explore more ways to engage really with startups. What's interesting on the French one is France got the biggest ratio, but what is very interesting is those corporations, on average, are using 1.7 different ways to work with startups. It's not only one way. They don't do only corporate VCs. They will do corporate VC plus accelerator, or they will do startup accelerator plus startup competition. So they try to find a lot of ways to do it. If you want to look at corporate doing a lot, look at Microsoft or Google. They're doing everything from scratch to like very early stage startup events to late stage fund M&A. Google is just missing the accelerator, but they have like some stuff around that. And here what's interesting is US, even if they get a huge sample on the report, they get only 45% of those corporations working with startups. So everyone knows about the big one, Microsoft, Google, but it's not definitely the majority of them in the US really working with startups. And we also look at industries, and it's interesting because if you look at the pharma industry, they have a very specific way to work. They work a lot with startups, but they work same, mostly through corporate venture arm. They don't do a lot of different things. When you look at telecom, they do also a lot of venture arm, but almost half of them are also doing corporate accelerators. So the telecom one are doing this in a little bit more wide way. Not only one option, but they look at different ways to engage with startups. Last but not least, on the report, we cover like 3 different corporations. We cover a telecom company, a bank, and a tech company to explain which challenges they are facing and how they try to solve that by working with startups. So if you want more, this is a report. We have like 50+ pages for you. Very easy to get. Just send me an email. I'll give you a free copy of the report. Thank you.